They're alive. Another wormhole!
11 underrated hard sci-fi movies that were made with a lot of effort. The world of science fiction is pretty intense, often having concepts that are not entirely believable. But when it comes to hard science fiction, it is grounded in scientific realism. The category of hard sci-fi usually concerns science fiction narratives that are more rational with science that either exist or could feasibly exist in the near future. One of the many advantages of coming up with hard sci-fi movies is that these productions are more inclined towards smaller budgets. They don't have to develop an extensive VFX-driven parade of fictional characters, space battles, and whatnot. The main objective is to use real science to make the flick more believable rather than allowing it to be entirely fiction. In today's video, we will make you explore the riveting world of 11 such hidden gems that were made with a lot of effort, but no one talks about them now. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
I made another wormhole now! I had no idea. A series of them! They're alive.
Contact 1997. Dr. Ellie Arroway is a SETI scientist who researches extraterrestrial life with her team in Puerto Rico. When her National Science Foundation superior shuts down the project, Ellie scouts for private funds to reopen her research in New Mexico. An anonymous millionaire gives her the required capital and Ellie carries on with her work. Some time passes and she is contacted by alien life forms from the star system Vega that are sending an encrypted message. The millionaire who is funding the research decodes the message and gives Ellie schematics of a complex machine. Ellie comes to a conclusion that it might be to transport a passenger to Vega. Now all she needs is to convince an authoritarian body that's formed by the armed forces, politicians, researchers, and religious leaders that she is the ideal candidate for the journey. Robert Zemeckis' Contact is an example of a movie that deserves to exist. Based on the breathtaking novel written by the late Carl Sagan, the magnitude of space and convolution of reality viewed through the inspection of the scientific eye is mind-boggling. To build a sense of realism for the plot, the principal CNN news outlet commentators were scripted into this 1997 science fiction drama. The entire film was shot by cinematographer Don Burgess in anamorphic format using Panavision cameras, large format 65mm, and VistaVision for those special effects shots. Coming up with a flow of the movie's visual effects was a collective effort among 8 VFX companies. This included Peter Jackson's Weta Digital, Sony Pictures Imageworks, George Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic, and Effects Associates with Pixar's RenderMan used for CGI rendering. Remember the wormhole sequence? Weta Digital particularly was in charge of that.
They're alive. It's like some kind of a transit system!
One of the key features of the movie is definitely its application of digital color correction. The film begins with a 3-minute computer-generated sequence with a panoramic view of the Earth from above. The camera then zooms in reverse and ultimately into deep space. The scale view shot of the full universe was inspired by the 1977 short documentary film Powers of 10. Back in that time, this was perhaps the longest uninterrupted computer-generated effect for a live-action film. Unraveling the extraterrestrial message along with its architectural drawings of the machine was created by popular visual effects artist Ken Ralston and Sony Pictures Imageworks. The machine was designed by concept artist Steve Berg. The scene that has the mysterious beach near the galactic core where Arroway makes contact called for a lot of visual innovations. Features such as waves of the ocean running backwards and the palm tree silhouettes swinging with sped-up motion were also applied. Jodie Foster's Ellie Arroway is loosely based on American astronomer Jill Tarter, and in his role, Foster is simply fantastic. So if you are a sci-fi fan, or should we say, a fan of hard sci-fi and haven't seen this film, you are in for a real treat. Europa Report 2013. Europa, one of the 4 Galilean moons of Jupiter, is known to have the perspective of supporting life. Therefore, a crew is sent to Europa to search for data that proves life exists there. The movie delves into the tough possibilities and sacrifices that the crew has to make to accomplish their target of sending valuable data back to the Earth for research. If you address yourself as a true sci-fi fan, you should definitely see this 2013 science fiction. The movie does not have a lot of visual effects, star cast, or even action for that matter. But what it does have is a sense of realism, scientific characters, and genuine human emotions. It tells us a simple story of a bunch of astronauts doing their job, ready to make sacrifices for science, and not being dramatic about it. You'll want to believe the characters, and the realistic approach of the film builds up the perfect suspense. The movie is made in a true spirit of the sci-fi genre, and what's even more satisfying about the film is how it retains its sense of awe. Director Sebastián Cordero maintains the heights of tension, never even for once not remembering how innately tenuous the safety of space travel is. The crew used real footage from the International Space Station and spacewalks from the Space Shuttle as their source of inspiration. The spaceship was made via computer graphics, giving high detail to the camera angles. The design of the creature included bioluminescence from the initial concepts. It was based on an amalgamation of an octopus and a squid, with early drawings resembling a jellyfish and a manta ray. Europa Report is a great entry in the canon of intelligent, well-made sci-fi flicks, and is highly recommended that you give this one a shot. Solaris 1972. A psychologist is sent on an interstellar journey to a space station orbiting the planet Solaris. The station that was once built to hold over 80 people now has only 3 occupants. After the baffling demise of one of the 3 scientists, Kelvin soon finds the station going downhill, with the remaining scientists displaying strange acts of behavior. When he happens to encounter his wife there, one who has been dead for 10 years, the psychologist begins to acknowledge the baffling nature of the alien intelligence. Andrei Tarkovsky's 1972 adaptation of Stanislaw Lem's novel of the same name is perhaps one of the most meditative, slow-paced, hard science fiction movies out there, preoccupied less with the technological aspects of mankind's venture into the outer limits of space and more on the psychological ramifications of space exploration. Like the best science fiction, Solaris is about ideas and has many layers within its storyline. The cinematography is sublime. The Soviet science fiction art film's visual beauty is indeed groundbreaking for its time. The Solaris Ocean was created with acetone, aluminum powder, and dyes. Mikhail Roman designed the space station as lived in, beat up, and decrepit on purpose rather than something shiny, neat, and futuristic. The movie is a real science fiction treat, and one of the finest hard sci-fi films that every serious science fiction fan should see.
Well, it's dividing. In a vacuum? Bombarded by electrons? It shouldn't even be alive.
The Andromeda Strain, 1971. After a US government satellite crashes near Piedmont's small rural town, it brings an alien organism with it. Barring a crying 6-month-old infant and a 69-year-old alcoholic with an ulcer, the whole population dies rapidly from clotted blood. A group of 4 scientists, Dr. Jeremy Stone, Dr. Charles Dutton, Dr. Mark Hall, and Dr. Ruth Leavitt, are assembled in a high-tech underground facility. Racing against time, the team tries to understand why the older man and the baby survived and research an antidote to Andromeda before it is too late. The Andromeda Strain happens to be one of the first films to use advanced computerized photographic visual effects. Reportedly $250,000 of the film's $6.5 million budget was used to create the special effects, including Douglas Trumbull's simulation of an electron microscope. This 1971 sci-fi thriller also contains a fake computer rendering created with conventional filmmaking processes of a map 3D view of the rotating structure of the 5-storied cylindrical underground laboratory in the Nevada desert named Project Wildfire. The Wildfire Scientific Lab sets estimated more than $300,000 to build and were recounted as one of the most intricately detailed interiors ever made during that time. Robert Wise's The Andromeda Strain also happens to be virtually perfect. The movie is appealing right from the starting credits that introduce us to the story. Of course, the veteran director had the brilliant novel of Michael Crichton, but he also did his best to bring the novel to the screen without giving up on the main ideas or minor details. The movie succeeds in telling us a great story about science way better than the modern CGI-filled movies. So, if you want to see a great sci-fi movie, choose this one and you will not be disappointed. Moon 2009. With only 3 weeks left in his 3-year contract, astronaut Sam Bell is getting anxious to come back to Earth finally. He is the only inhabitant of a moon-based manufacturing facility along with his computer and assistant Gertie. However, this long duration of time has resulted in him talking to himself mostly or to his plants. Due to a long-standing communication malfunction, direct communication with Earth is not possible, but he does get fragmented messages from his wife Tess. Days before he is to return home, Sam meets with an accident and wakes up only to find out that he is not the only one there.
Is there someone in the room with us?
He also discovers that his world is not what he thought it was. With a budget of $5 million, director Duncan Jones took enough steps to reduce production costs. He kept the cast small and filmed in a studio. The movie was produced at the Shepperton Studios in London, where it was filmed in just 33 days. Jones preferred using models to digital animation. He worked with Bill Pearson, the supervising model maker on Alien, to help design the moon rovers and helium-3 harvesters in the film. The base of the moon was created as a full 360-degree set, measuring 85 to 90 feet long and close to 70 feet wide. The visual effects of the film were provided by Cinesite, and since Jones had an effects background with television commercials, he drew on his experience to create special effects within a small budget. To save more on the production costs, Jones reutilized a number of set pieces, like the sleeping quarters and the corridor of the secret room from an abandoned movie based on the BBC TV sci-fi comedy Red Dwarf. We sincerely recommend you to watch this brilliantly executed directorial debut of Duncan Jones.
How can you know the future?
Arrival 2016. Linguistics professor Louise Banks heads a selected team of investigators when enormous spaceships land in 12 different locations around the world. As the nations gear up on the verge of a global war, Banks and her team must gallop through time and find a way to communicate with the intergalactic visitors. In the hopes of unraveling a mystery, she takes a plunge that could put her life and all of mankind in danger. Only a handful of mainstream directors working in Hollywood today have the ability to produce films that not only manage to rise above their commercial ambitions, but also retain popular appeal. Denis Villeneuve is one such director, bringing a degree of class and thoughtfulness to blockbuster-scale productions rare for the industry. This 2016 release is one such film, tackling relatively complex scientific and philosophical themes within the framework of a multiplex movie and succeeding immensely. It's an alien invasion movie in which linguistics plays a vital role both in how humans strive to communicate with their visitors and how language and memory shape the human experience. Villeneuve consulted linguistics experts from McGill University to craft the alien language. He, along with the screenwriter Eric Heiseser, came up with a thoroughly functioning visual alien language. They actually created a logogram Bible, including over 100 different entirely operative logograms, 71 of which are featured in the movie. The popular inky circular alien language shown in the movie was created by Montreal artist Martine Bertrand. Although the shape of the ship was decided quite early, Villeneuve had quite a difficult time visualizing an interior that would allow humans to easily navigate through such a steep and vertical design. The decision to turn gravity sideways later turned out quite fruitful. The concept of color timing was used as a means of matching Banks' state of mind at a given moment. Artist James Turrell also plays a very big role when it concerns the film's look, particularly the design of the meeting room aboard the alien craft. Do watch this sober sci-fi drama for the ending that is both a mind-bender and a tearjerker.
In jeopardy. Override command statement. Manual flight controls removed.
Why?
Negative, Icarus, negative. State reason immediately.
Fire and oxygen guarding.
Sunshine 2007. In the year 2057, the sun is dying and the Earth is freezing. After the spaceship Icarus 1 becomes unsuccessful in reviving the sun back and also vanishes, a new team of 8 highly trained astronauts operate a colossal stellar bomb aboard the spaceship Icarus 2 to reignite the dying sun and return to Earth. However, when a crew member commits a mistake in the operation of the aircraft shield, he jeopardizes the survival of the whole group. Based on a screenplay by Alex Garland, Danny Boyle's Sunshine is an ambitious film which attempts to bridge the gap between straight-up hard science fiction and psychological horror, and it largely succeeds in doing so. This 2007 science fiction psychological thriller is inspired by the concept of the universe's heat death, and believe us when we say that professional scientists were called upon as consultants. Cinematographer Alwyn H. Kuchler wanted to capture a physical sense of the light, so he opted to film in anamorphic format. To escalate the feeling of claustrophobia in Sunshine, Boyle refused to cut back to scenes on Earth. This is a traditional technique used in a lot of films that usually depict the planet in danger. The director also maintained a particular atmosphere of confinement in Sunshine by avoiding to film the primary ship Icarus 2 from the outside, limiting to only a few outside shots of the ship. He kept the exterior of the ship pitch black, but was eventually led to show stars outside the spacecraft that helped convey a sense of the ship's movement. Remember the scene in a snow-covered park with the 3 stone monoliths? The filmmakers also consulted NASA in designing the scientific aspects of the film. Technical specifications for the film were provided in order to make it more realistic. NASA's satellite designs influenced the golden leaf shielding in the movie for deflecting heat and other forms of radiant energy. Boyle also sought after inexpensive methods when it came to filming sequences that involve actors and visual effects. There's a particular scene in the movie where Cillian Murphy's character dreams of falling into the sun. Would you believe us if we told you that the actor was actually placed in a gantry with 20 assistants rotating an assembly of bright lights? Do give this thrilling, gripping, and thought-provoking sci-fi movie a shot if you haven't. You will thank us later.
Oh, it's pitiful. Pitiful. That's exactly the opposite of what it's supposed to be.
Silent Running, 1972. The future Earth is barren of all flora and fauna, and the planet's ecosystems exist only in large pods that are attached to large spacecraft. So when word comes in that these pods are to be chucked into space and destroyed, literally every crew of the Valley Forge revel at the possibility of going home. But it's not the same case for the resident botanist Freeman Lowell. He loves his forest and the creatures, so he gets rid of the crewmen and takes the ship deep into space. While he is alone on the ship with 3 service robots as his only companions, Lowell rejoices in happiness. But when his other colleagues appear to save him, he contemplates the fate of his last pocket of nature. This 1972 environmental-themed post-apocalyptic science fiction marks the directorial debut of Douglas Trumbull. The film does not boast of those million-dollar special effects, nor is it overloaded with the exciting action scenes. This movie is about isolation, alienation, lost causes, and the unavoidable future. In other words, Silent Running happens to be a genuine science fiction film and not something filled with the glitz of technology and special effects. The deactivated Essex-class aircraft carrier, which is a veteran of Korea and Vietnam, served as the interior of the space freighter Valley Forge. Places like the flight control area and hangar deck of the carrier were remodeled and then painted to represent the space freighter in the film. The visual effects in the film are excellent, and to keep the costs down, Trumbull hired college students for model making and other special effects work. So, if you're in the mood for a light, thoughtful sci-fi tale of a lonely one-way journey, do check this one out.
John, we're teachers. We answer silly questions all the time.
Hey.
What if a man from the Upper Paleolithic survived until the present day?
What do you mean, survived? Never died?
Yes.
The Man from Earth, 2007. An impromptu farewell party for departing university professor John Oldman turns into mystifying probing after the retiring scholar discloses to his colleagues that he has a longer and stranger past than they can think of. The professor claims to be a Cro-Magnon who has secretly survived for more than 14,000 years.
Did you start the whiskey before we got here?
Pretend it's science fiction.
Richard Shankman's drama science fiction film happens to be a sci-fi film with absolutely no special effects or an outstanding set design. It relies solely on the story and a room full of actors. The story is American short story and scriptwriter Jerome Bixby's last work, which he completed on his deathbed in April 1988. After his death, the script was given to Richard Shankman to direct on a budget of just $200,000. The entire film was shot using two Panasonic DVX-100 camcorders, which possibly explains the overall grainy look of the film. To sci-fi fans who are open-minded and all set for an adventure that is born of thought, ideas, and possibilities, do make sure that you do not miss this unique sci-fi experience. Marooned, 1969. After spending 5 of a planned 7 months in orbiting Space Lab, a crew of 3 astronauts, Jim Pruitt, Clayton Stone, and Buzz Lloyd, are instructed to return to Earth by the head of the program, Charles Keith. They soon discover that their retro rockets won't fire and they are not able to return back. With just 42 hours of oxygen left, Keith and many others at NASA try to find a solution to get the trio back safe and alive. NASA's chief astronaut Ted Dougherty suggests a rescue mission, but to make things even worse, a hurricane is approaching the launch site. Faced with inadequate oxygen, the trio of astronauts face the final decision, and for those who manage to survive, help comes from an unexpected source. Given the fact that Apollo missions were watched regularly by television audiences at the time, it was quite significant to the producers that the look of the film be as authentic as possible. NASA and its primary contractors North American Aviation and Philco Ford helped with the design of the film's hardware. This included the crew's chairs inside the capsule, the orbiting laboratory, which used an early mock-up of the Skylab concept, the service module, the real Plantronics headsets that were worn by the actors in the spacecraft, and the genuine replicas of the actual facilities. The film does not have any musical score. What's exciting and unique is that each of the spacecrafts has their own natural soundtrack. This 1969 science fiction film by John Sturges is quite tense and definitely worth seeing, especially for fans who would like to get an insight into the fears people had during the days of the Apollo program.
Come on, let's arm wrestle. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Robot and Frank, 2012. Frank Weld is an aging ex-convict who lives alone. Although periodic trips to the local library keep him quite active, his memory has become weak and he suffers from chronic mental deterioration and dementia. His own son grows tired of making weekly visits to his place and, concerned over the fact that he lives alone, gifts him a companion bot. Frank initially resents the robot, begins to literally relish their strange relationship. Soon after, when the fate of the local library is threatened, Frank falls back into his old ways and realizes that this robot also doubles as an efficient criminal sidekick. Robot and Frank happens to be one of the most understated and underrated science fiction movies crafted by director Jake Schreier and screenwriter Christopher D. Ford. This 2012 flick happens to be a movie that is whimsical on the surface but carries with it a melancholic tone. It reflects on the notion of aging in a world where automation threatens to dehumanize how we care for the elderly.
What are you doing?
You got a phone up there in that brain?
Robot and Frank isn't related to unpacking the integrity of artificial intelligence and how robots might pose a threat to the existence of humanity, but its exploration of Frank's slow side into dementia and how this challenges the robot's programming is a far more distinctive approach to the material than is generally produced in Hollywood. Shot in just 20 days on a budget of $2.5 million, this movie defies categorization. We don't know if it's a science fiction, a heist movie, a family drama, or a melancholic feel-good story about aging. It doesn't feature any shootouts, car chases, super spies, superheroes, martial arts scenes, or any demented villains. But what it definitely has is character development, good writing, and a nice story. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.
Hello there. Self-destruct sequence initialized. 10, 9.
You didn't.
8.
I'd run.
7.
Frank, stay there. Don't move.
6.